Hey guys, welcome to Telling the Told Untold. My name is Tshego. So before we go straight into today's case, I have some really exciting news and a word from Gerard. So, boop.
Hello Tshego and your viewers. My name is Gerard Labuschagne. I was the head of the South African Police Service's profiling unit called the Investigative Psychology Section for 14.5 years, and also the author of the Profiler Diaries, from the case files of a police psychologist. So an informer told me about your YouTube channel, Telling the Told and Untold, and I went and had a look. So I was really excited to see that you had actually discussed my book, and I think, as far as I know, 2 episodes so far about chapters from my book. Thanks very much for that. So I decided I'm going to give you a signed copy for yourself, and also to say thank you, 2 copies for your viewers, which you can decide how you want to give those away. I'll also sign those to those 2 winners, and we'll get those books off to them as a big thank you for what you've been doing for true crime in South Africa, and of course helping me get my book out there amongst a wide range of people. So thanks for your interest in South African true crime stories. We have a lot of really amazing cases here in South Africa, and it's really nice to see people in South Africa taking an interest in those cases, and also seeing the good work that's been done by the police and the victims who came forward, and of course the prosecutors. So to all your viewers, if you like what you heard so far on Tshego's channel, please consider buying my book. There's obviously a lot of little details in here that you might not get from the YouTube channel itself. You get all the insights as to what it was like working in this unit and the ups and downs of dealing with these types of cases. So I think you really enjoy the book. So take care, be safe. From me, Gerard Labuschagne.
So basically, I am having my first ever giveaway, and I'm really excited. I really didn't think about this, but like what requirements are needed and stuff. But basically, just be subscribed, like my videos, and yeah, have watched my Profiler Diary videos and commented, and yeah, I think that's it. It will be a random selection, and the winners will be chosen mid-September. So yeah. In March 2011, in just the span of 8 days, an axe murderer went around killing 4 men and further injuring 2 others. This is the Brighton Beach Axe Murders, episode 3 of the Profiler Diaries. On the 20th of March 2011, Thembinkosi Xebekulu, I hope I pronounced that properly, was in Mpangeni and was attending his brother's funeral. He received a phone call from his employer, and he was basically just asking if he'd be able to work the next day. And Thembinkosi agreed, and in the afternoon, he left and was on his way home, which was Durban. At around 9:15 that evening, he called his girlfriend, Mabel Dlamini, and told her that he was almost home. He just stopped at the garage and asked if there's something that he should bring home, and she just asked him to come home with some bread. At 22:10 that evening, a man, Mr. Donnelly, was on his way home when he saw a man like standing and someone else lying on the pavement. So at first he thought they were just fighting, but as he drove closer, he saw this man was holding an axe and was hacking away at this body on the floor. He slowly drove past, went home. As soon as he got home, he called the police and then made his way back to the scene. He said that this man was dressed in black tracksuit pants, a black t-shirt, as well as a black cap. When he arrived on the scene, police officers soon arrived too, and he told them what he had seen. Around the same time that he saw what was happening, another man too was driving past, and then at first he saw a man standing, and he thought that he was just like hitting a snake. And as he got closer, he was like, no man, this object is a bit bigger than a snake. So he thought it was a dog. And as he was literally like right by the scene, he saw that no, this man was actually hacking away at a human body. So he drove a little bit further, stopped his car, called the police. Then he made a U-turn to go back to the scene. And he said when he got back there, the man wasn't there anymore, but he did see who he believed to be the killer getting into a small silver or grey car. The scene was really gruesome and bloody. Thembingosi's body was lying on the side of the pavement and his head was barely attached to the rest of his body. It was just hanging on by small pieces of skin. About 11 meters away, lying in the middle of the street, next to his cap, was the bread that Mabel had asked him to come home with. First responders arrived on the scene at around 10 p.m. and were done within the hour. And around the same time that they arrived on the scene, Mabel knew something was wrong because Thembinkosi hadn't arrived home yet and the garage wasn't that far. So she just knew something was wrong. So she decided to call him. And this is when a police officer answered the phone and just told her that no, they're with Thembinkosi, but they'll bring him home like soon. And immediately she knew something was wrong and she started crying. About 15 minutes later, at 10:15, she called his phone again and another police officer answered the phone and said the same thing, and she immediately started crying, told them that they're lying, and dropped the phone. After this, she went to her employer, so I believe she lived on the same property as her employer, and told him what was going on and how she believed something bad had happened to Thembinkosi and that he was dead. After this, they got into the car and drove to the police station, and on their way to the police station, they actually passed the crime scene and they saw that a body was lying on the pavement with the foil blanket lying over it. And Mabel said she immediately knew that it was Thembinkosi, but they still proceeded to the police station. Once they got to the police station, the officers that were there told them to go to the scene that they had just passed. So they went to the scene, and by the time they arrived, the mortuary van that comes to like collect the body had also arrived, and the foil blanket that was on Thembinkosi had been removed, and Mabel saw his clothes, saw the clothes that he was wearing, and already knew that it was him. On the 22nd of March at around 20 to 12 p.m., Themba Buthelezi was on his way home when he found the decapitated body of a man in the traffic circle. The man was wearing a bright yellow shirt, blue jeans, and had on one shoe. He immediately called the police, and once police arrived on the scene, they just went around the nearby houses asking questions, and this is when they found the man's wife. She identified the man as Paula's Ntshongwana, and she had been married to him for 30 years. She says the last time she saw him was at 1:45 p.m. when he was on his way to KFC where he worked, and yeah, that was the last time she had seen him. Later that evening, a homeless man was digging through a municipality dustbin, those ones you find like on the side of the road. He was looking for food when he came across a head. He went to the police station, told them what they had found, and the investigating officer was with Paula's wife at the time. So at around 2 a.m. they went to the dustbin and she identified his head, which is so traumatic because I don't know why they would do that. Why would you, like, why? I'm so confused. Coincidentally enough, the bin that his head was found in had a KFC advertisement at the particular KFC that he worked at. After the second murder, a task team was found, and the first agenda that they had was just to go around the neighborhood and just go around asking people questions and see if they had seen something. And this is when they found one of their first witnesses, and her name was Nombusa Hadebe. She says that she was too scared to come forward. She was pregnant at the time as well. So she says that that night she was just about to go to bed when she heard shouting and like something like a steel thing hitting the ground. And after this, she went to the window to go see what was going on. And this is when she saw a big that's when she went to the window and she saw a man who was shaven, was like bald, was shaven, and had a big physique. And she says that this man was basically like hitting at something on the ground. And afterwards, this man went to his car, came out with an orange plastic bag, picked something up, got back into his car and drove away. The next witness was a security guard. So police officers looked at the scene of the crime and noticed that there was a building in the distance, and assumed that someone from there probably saw what had happened, and they were correct. The security guard said that that night he heard someone screaming, "Oh mother," and then he just tried to peek and see what was going on, and this is where he saw a man lying on the floor and another man standing holding something that he thought was a stick. And then he says that nearby there was a silver car with the driver's door open, and it was just there, like it wasn't moving, like it was off. It was stationary. Sorry, it was stationary. And then afterwards, this guy got into the car, then drove down the street, afterwards made a U-turn, drove back, stopped the car, repeated this process about 2-3 times, and then got out the car, picked something up, went back into his car, and finally left. As the task team was investigating, they found out that there was a survivor from the axe murderer, and his name was Kangeleni Felix Nduli, and he says that he was attacked on the 22nd of March, the same day as Paul's, and fortunately he survived. So he says at around 10:30 that evening, he was on his way home from Sasco when he saw a car. He said it was like a silver grey Peugeot, I don't know how to pronounce it properly, with Eastern Cape number plates. So this car was driving behind him, like slowly, then it passed him and the guy looked at him. Then the guy made a U-turn and then stopped the car behind him, and then he said the man got out holding a plastic, and it looked like the plastic had something heavy inside of it. He says that then this guy started speaking to him like he knew him. He spoke to him in Zulu, but he says this guy's Zulu sounded like it was Joburg Zulu, not like KZN Zulu, and that's what he noticed. And then afterwards, this man accused him of sleeping with his daughter and having given her AIDS. Afterwards, the man pulled out an axe from the plastic bag, aimed it at the guy's head and threw it, but fortunately enough, Kangeleni ducked just in time, and the axe hit the right side of his rib cage instead. Somehow he managed to run, and this guy started following him, but he did manage to escape. Kangeleni managed to help them compile a identikit, and he said that this man was between 33 to 35 years old. He was wearing black or navy tracksuit pants, khaki cap, which is I think like flowers, like florally and stuff, and white tackies. He also said that the man was left-handed. On the 23rd of March at 3 a.m., Sihle Mhlongo was going to bed when he heard someone screaming outside, "Haibo Buti," and then after that he went to the window to go see what was going on, and this is where he saw a man like standing holding an axe with a yellow grip to it, and like hacking away at someone on the ground. And he also could hear like the axe hitting the ground and hitting the person's body. He then called his wife to like come see what was going on, and then after that he like tried going outside to go stop everything that was going on. But unfortunately, he managed to open the door, but they couldn't find the key for the security gate. Like, you know, you have those like burglar bars and then the door. So they couldn't find the key for that thing. So like he tried scaring this man, but this man didn't seem to like be phased. And then he finally screamed, "Ewe na wenzani," like, "What are you doing?" And that's when the man finally looked phased. And then he kind of just like stopped what he was doing, stood up, and then walked away. Mhlongo then called 10111, and as soon as police officers arrived, he told them what he had seen and said that he'd never forget that man's face. He said that he was tall and well built and looked to be like in his 30s. The victim was identified as Simon Ngidi, and he had multiple wounds to his face, head, and neck, and his right ear was also sliced off. Like half of it was sliced off. The task team then managed to find another victim that survived the axe murderer, and his name was Sianda Emmanuel Khumalo, and he says on the 21st of March at around 20 to 10, he was on his way home after having visited his father. So he was walking, and then he saw this silver car like driving slowly. And then this guy stopped his car on the side of the road, got out, and started following him. Sianda then decided to start walking in the middle of the road, and then this guy too started like following him, walking in the middle of the road. So as this guy was following him, he managed to grab Sianda's collar, and then Sianda kind of just like got like his hand off of him, managed to run, and this is when the man took out an axe from a plastic bag and threw it at Sianda, and it hit him in his back, but he did manage to escape. He says that this man didn't say anything to him, just besides the one thing he said, which was, "Come back here." He said that the man was tall, well built, dressed in black, and he spoke Zulu. As the task team was investigating, they received a phone call from one victim's sister, and she says that she had heard about the axe murderings that were going on, and she said it sounded similar to what had happened to her brother the previous year in 2010. She says that on the 26th of November, her brother Mtleli Tolo was on his way home. He was walking on Sterling Road when a silver grey car was driving behind him slowly. The car then stopped next to him. A guy got out and in Zulu asked him if he knew someone by the name Zama. Mtleli said no, and then the guy got out of his car and started hitting him in the head with a baton that he had. After this, Mtleli fell unconscious, and when he finally woke up a couple of seconds later, the man was on top of him and still assaulting him. A neighbor saw what was happening and managed to scream and get the guy to stop assaulting Mtleli, and then after this, he managed to run home, and once he got home, he told him what happened, then fell on the couch and fell unconscious again, and then they took him to the hospital. And then when he woke up, he said he managed to get the registration number, which is the license plates, as well as the make and model of the car. The car was a silver grey Chevrolet Aveo. After Mtleli was discharged, he went to the police station and opened a case. He said that the man was tall, was a black man, and he was really well built, and said that he had the body of a wrestler or a rugby player. 8 days after this man attacked him, he was at the spa, the local spa there in the community, and he literally saw the same car with this man sitting inside of it. On the 28th of March, the task team managed to locate a suspect. Because Mtleli managed to write down the registration number, they were able to put it up in the system, and after this, they saw that it belonged to Mrs. Litlaku, and after this, they went to where she lived, and they basically were just observing the house before they approached it or did anything. And as they were observing the house, they asked the neighbors if there was a black man, tall, well-built, shaven, that lived there, and they said yes. And this is when they knew that they had their suspect. So after keeping the house under observation for a couple of hours, they decided to approach the house. So a couple of officers went to the front door and 2 others went at the back. So while these people were knocking on the front door and these 2 officers were at the back, there was another house, a back room, flat Nyana type thing. That's what was there. So they said that they saw this big man walk out, and they were kind of intimidated because he was very big, buff, well built, all the other witnesses had described. And fortunately enough for them, he didn't try and do anything. And apparently when they tried handcuffing him, his wrists were so big the handcuffs didn't fit, so they had to resort to those foot ones, those ankle ones. Yeah. This man was identified as Phinidile Joseph Jr. Ntshongwana. After they had arrested Phinidile, they told his mother, Mrs. Litlaka, why her son was being arrested, and they asked where the Chevrolet was, and apparently it had been involved in a car accident a couple of days before, so they didn't have it, but they did have a car rental from Avis, and this car was an Opel Corsa. So they asked Mrs. Litlaka if they could search the house, and she's like, why do you want to search my house? You're not going to do that, you need a search warrant. And the officer basically explained that they're still going to come with the search warrant tomorrow, but this just saves time, makes everything easier. And eventually she agreed. She signed a paper that said like she knew what was going on. And she was very hostile towards the police officers, and she even told them, you know what, just search my room first. I need to go to bed. I have work tomorrow. During their search of their house, outside they found a dog kennel, and inside they found something that looked like rotten meat, an axe, as well as blood-stained clothing. They asked Mrs. Litlaka if they had a dog, and she said they hadn't had a dog since 2010. Okay, so now I'm going to read you everything else they found in the dog kennel. They found a Victrix handle axe with a yellow wooden handle. It was 30 to 35 centimeters in length with a steel blade that was 12 to 15 centimeters in length. The blade was pitted at the end and sharp. There was a pair of red, black, and silver Nike trainers with the toe cap missing, black plastic trash bag, pair of blue jeans, red and black cannon cap, a pair of white socks, an orange municipality black plastic bag, not black plastic bag, a orange municipal plastic bag, yes, as well as green plastic bags, green locked sleeve jersey, a pair of black and white trainers, as well as a white plastic container. After this, they summoned a dog to just like go through the house and see if they could detect any blood or semen, and the dog did pick up on a ton of blood in the flat that Phinidile lived outside, like outside the main house, and they found this blood in his en-suite. They found blood outside the bath, on the tiles, by the shower, that little step you take as you get into the shower, on the bathroom mat. There was literally just blood everywhere, and it was later identified as female blood. An unidentified female. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. The rental car from Avis was examined, and they saw that the boot had been damaged. There was blood stain on the right front door, as well as the back seat that was directly behind the driver's seat. Phinidile said that the reason why the car had blood was because he had transported a couple of people that were involved in a car accident. Convenient. So who was Phinidile? Phinidile was a 33-year-old man at the time, and he lived with his mother and a domestic helper since 2005. He attended Settlers Agricultural High School in Limpopo and matriculated in 1997. Thereafter, he went to Tshwane University of Technology to study sport management and marketing until 2001. At the time of his arrest, he was unemployed. He had also played for the SA Barbarians rugby team in 1996, and he was one of the first black players to be contracted by the Blue Bulls Rugby Union between 1998 to 2001. He was such a good player, and after a break from his rugby career from 2009 to 2010, he approached Barnett van Graan, who was the CEO of the Blue Bulls, because he wanted to make a comeback. But Van Graan said after Phinidile approached him, he disappeared again after that. His mother was a law lecturer and his father was a former diplomat. Apparently, Phindile's mental health started rapidly declining in the few years before the murders took place. When he was arrested, he did have a 5-year-old son, but despite the claims that he had made to his victims, he did not have a daughter. In December of 2009, he was diagnosed at RK Khan Hospital with schizoaffective disorder, bipolar type. It appeared as though he didn't take his medication and was readmitted there in July 2010. And throughout July 2010 to February 2011, he was in and out of psychiatric hospitals. And at some point in 2010, he did escape. Like, he was being transported in an ambulance, and then he managed to like get out of it and just make a run for it. 3 days after Phinidile was arrested on the 1st of April, a man was like taking a walk with his dog when his dog started like barking and trying to drag him to a nearby railway line. And he was like he kept trying to pull his dog back, but you know, his dog was really persistent, so he just went along with his dog. And about 20 meters further down the line, he found a body. This body was of a black adult male, and he had been decapitated. The smell was really bad, which means the body had probably been there for quite a while and was in its early stages of decomposition. The victim's head had been smashed to pieces, and an autopsy determined that his body had been there around the same time as Phinidile's murder spree. This man was found about 500 meters away from where Phinidile's house was, and he was found with his pants by his ankles, wearing a white top, and he still had his shoes on as well. Unfortunately, this man has never been identified to this day, but it is strongly believed that he is one of Phinidile's victims because of the way that he was murdered. And it's just like a well-known belief that maybe he was on his way home or something, and he just decided to take a leak, which is why his pants were found by his ankles, but everything else, but he still had all his other clothing. So like it was kind of caught off guard. After Phinidile's arrest, one of the prosecutors said that they had a docket and they were still waiting to see whether they could like take it further, and the main suspect of this case was no other than Phinidile. This case involved the kidnapping and rape of a woman on the 28th of November 2010. This woman was on her way to Durban from Kwangoma and was visiting her sister. So once she arrived in Durban and she was walking, she said that this car stopped next to her, and then this man like greeted her like he knew her and basically just offered her a ride. And I think at first she was very hesitant about it, but he really insisted that no, don't worry, I'll take you, along those lines. And finally she agreed and she got into the car. So as in the car and they're driving, he passed her destination. So she kept telling him like to stop the car because they'd passed, and he just like kept quiet. And then afterwards he took her hand, put it on his groin, and basically just asked, have you ever slept with what's a man? That's what he asked. And then she said no, and then afterwards he's like, well, you're gonna find out today how it feels like. Can you imagine that? So afterwards they're driving, get to his home. He parks the car in the garage and takes her to his flat. That's like, remember, his flat that's outside the main house. So they get there, they get into his bedroom, and then he then locks the door, and he kept her captive for 3 days. And throughout those 3 days he would constantly sexually assault her. And she says that like throughout these 3 days his mood would fluctuate. Like some days he was very kind and soft towards her, and then other times he would just burst and basically start swearing at her and just asking her like who she's sleeping with and telling her how he's going to kill her. On the 3rd day, which was the 1st of December, this woman asked Phinidile if she could go home just so that she could get a couple of clothes. And at first he was very reluctant, but eventually he did agree. And after that he told her to just stay in the room quickly, he'll be back just now. And after he left for a couple of minutes, she took this opportunity to search through his bedroom, and this is where she found his ID as well as a debonair slip. So throughout those 3 days, one of the days he ordered debonair's pizza, and I think it was for delivery because it had his address on it. So she took these 2 things as evidence, and eventually came back to the house and then to the bedroom, and then he was like, okay, we can go now. So they drove to the apartment building of flats. He stayed in the car and she got out. So as she got out and she was like climbing up the stairs, she saw one of her friends that she knew, and this person was named Sia. And fortunately, Sia had a pen and paper on them, and she then asked Sia to like take down the registration number as well as the make and model of the car. Then she asked Sia to go tell the security guards not to let that car in, and this Sia went to go do this, and then she ran to her pastor and then told the pastor what happened, and then he took her to the police station where she then opened a case against Phinidile. The trial began in November 2012, and due to a number of delays, it went on for about 2 years, but eventually sentencing began on the 9th of December 2014. Phinidile Ntshongwana was sentenced to 5 life terms of imprisonment for the 4 murders and the multiple rapes of the female victim. She wasn't named throughout the book, and he also received a further 14 years for the other crimes that he had committed. I know you guys are probably wondering whether or not his mental health was taken into account throughout his trial, and it was. And during the sentencing, the judge basically said to Phinidile that he could see that this man had no remorse. He was laughing at the female victim when she was up on the stand recounting what had happened to her. He literally just looked like he didn't care, and he was very well aware about what he was doing when he murdered all his victims and had kidnapped this woman. And this is the main reason they say that he knew what he was doing and knew it was wrong, was because he had taken the time to hide all of the clothes that he had, hide the axe, and yeah, he was well aware about what he was doing and knew it was wrong. And that's it for today's case. If you guys have any comments, please leave them down below, and don't forget to enter my first ever giveaway. I'm really excited about that, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.